Welcome back to another Black City coffee vlog. We are deciding between two coffees. Three too, but I've been tasting this for like the last 24 hours. Oh well. Okay. Costa Rica is off the table. Man. Okay. Here's the thing. This is how I choose, okay? This coffee, I won't tell you what it is yet. It's got great acidity, great body. These are all a little underdeveloped, so I'm looking at these coffees as like, what's their potential? What can I do with this coffee? And I'm considering myself like, can I do a good job with this coffee, right? Will my market like it? My very small market, will they like it, right? Because I'm not just here to buy coffee for myself. I'm actually buying for, yes, myself a little bit, but also, is this going to sell well? Because I don't want to have old green in here, you know? And sometimes that happens, but you know, those are the things I'm considering when I'm buying another coffee. So this coffee, really great versatility, really great acidity and body and sweetness. This one is kind of like, to me, even though it's actually scored a smidge lower, I think to me it's more of a standout on the table, and only because of the ferment factor, which, interesting enough, both of them are fermented in a way that is very fruity. So like reminiscent of like your special process, natural processing coffees and such, okay? And this one I can taste just a little bit more of that ferment fruity flavor that I really love personally, but maybe not everybody else loves. And I also have to think about, in this coffee in particular, I want to be able to roast it medium and maybe even like a medium dark, and still have great flavor and all the things, okay? The way that I make a distinction in my brain, like these are two really outstanding coffees, both that on price, really similar as well, on scoring, really similar as well. So then how do I decide, you know? So for me, in terms of a couple of things really tip the scale for me. So how I do it is like, will I be able to roast it? How well will I be able to roast it consistently? That's it. You know, what's the run that's going to be the easiest to roast and like maybe to deal with? I keep looking at the wrong side, sorry. And I'm going to have to go with this one. Wait. Am I pointing to the right one? Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to have to go with this one. That is going to be this guy right here. Bye-bye. Which I already said, you know. It's going to be easier to roast for me. So not always do I decide like which one's the easiest. No, it's like, make your list, make your delineations, your pros and cons or whatever it is. And then as you get down to it, then you start going, okay, well, what are the things that will really matter, I think, with this particular green? Versus having like a blanket deciding method or system for every coffee, I think you should adjust accordingly, you know? What makes sense for this particular case, you know? So I've got a big tart cherry, brighter and cleaner in the finish in the cup, and I feel like a lot more people really love that. Okay. Oh, El Salvador wins this round. This is day 3. So I've been steadily tasting these coffees for the last 3 days. And usually I just make a decision based on 1 or 2 days. But I think part of being a roaster is always kind of like reflecting, analyzing, adjusting, refining your process and your systems. And plus, you know, I have the time. So with the luxury of time this weekend, I definitely want to just sit down with these and really have a good grasp and a good why onto why I'm choosing these coffees or this particular coffee. So I'd already basically made up my mind, right? By, and I'm still pretty sure about that, but for experiment's sake and just to double check, I want to taste these all again. We have a natural on the table, which means you should always give like 2 days of rest. So I do my sort of accelerated cupping where on the day that I roast it, I'll grind up the coffee right on the same day that I roasted it. I'll let it sit out for like an hour now. I'm just like, you know what, let it sit out for an hour. There's a natural on the table. See if that'll off-gas enough for me to be able to taste any of that potential. And then I'll taste it again at the 24-hour mark, again, 48 hours. And even if I have some left, there's no point in just like keeping it around this sample, you know, this sample coffee right here. Test it again. So just keep testing and seeing if, you know, as a roaster, can I pick up any of those nuances from this sort of underdeveloped roast and see if anything sparks into my brain in terms of like, hey, actually, this will be really good as a medium. This is better as a dark. This is better as a light, or absolutely don't go medium, you know, things like that. So those are the things I'm trying to find out and discover when I bring a new green in. Okay, so these are all new green. I've had some similar ones before, but, you know, being such a small roaster, I do have the luxury to just try a bunch of different things all the time. You know, we're going to be balancing what I actually like as a roaster, what I want to create and provide and actually roast and just, I don't know, work with, and then also what people will like, you know. This smells like fresh laundry. The Costa Rica on the break. Raisin bread for the Colombia. And another grape nuts on the break. Okay. I think what's most important when you're developing your systems for cupping and finding out, you know, the bottom line, the whole thing is like, which one do I buy? Which ones do I buy, right? I think the most important thing is, you know, am I developing a system that I can replicate? You know, we're talking about building systems. This is a very repetitive sort of job, I think, or career or work. You know, it's pretty repetitive. There is nuance within the repetitions for sure. Just kind of like working out or something. There's repetitions and there's nuance within the repetitions. However, working on the system, the overall structure of how this is done and how we get to make that decision, I think is the most, I think, sort of important thing that you could put on the goalpost and be like, okay, this is the goal. We're going to make evolutions to get there. And here's how we're going to go about it, you know, at least have some sort of system down. Systems, as you'll find out, if you're not an entrepreneur or in business for yourself, are very, very important. They will come to drive you mad and also come to give you liberation. So on both ends, which is great, if you know what to do. And once you find your way, for sure. All right, we're 2 minutes in. We're going to let these sit here. 5 minutes, 6 minutes, 7 minutes, 8 minutes, beyond, probably up until like 24, 30 minutes, something like that, and see how the cup evolves. It's been a solid 3 days of waiting now at this point. So that means I should really be able to tell, if not already, the full potential of these coffees and make a definitive decision at this point. Again, we're always refining, evolving our style of and system of making decisions like this, but you know, we're just going to go with the flow and see. My hunch is still this. If I am surprised and I change my mind, this is the time to do it. Okay, we're into the 5th minute. I think we should give these guys a whirl, and then we'll talk about choosing coffees kind of based on how well you can roast it as a roaster, meaning you're taking into consideration the capacity or the power of your roaster. Okay, but let's give these a whirl first. Personally, I just really love the El Salvador because of that really rich fermented fruit flavor. It's not going to be like your typical like lactic acid, super expensive coffee too. I think the price is very affordable at, what is this, like, I get the 20 kilo bag, $2.99 for a 20 kilo at $6.79 a pound. I think that's so good. I mean, for this kind of cup quality, you know. It's so sweet without, like, I've been lately trying to have coffee with milk and sugar, and I'm just like, this pales into comparison to the rich fruity flavors that I do already get with just a regular good black coffee, you know, that's roasted well and brewed well, you know. And then when I try to put milk and sugar and stuff like that, because maybe I want just a little bit of candy, I'm like, ugh. I can't get used to it. Unless somebody else made it, I'm probably making it wrong. That's probably my fault. And then this Colombia. This is sort of like stand out in that it has that fermented fruit, and interesting, you know, and it sort of pops on the table for me because I like that stuff, and I feel like that stuff is loud on the table. And then you get one of these like Colombia washed coffee, just very clean and nuanced, and there's sort of clarity in between the flavors as well, and I'm getting different hits of flavor from different parts of my mouth. And both of them are great in that way. Like, that sort of hits me in the center of my mouth. The sort of baking spices, fermented fruit, winey vibes. Typical of a clean, natural, not clean, but just like a classic natural. And then we have the washed Colombia from Tolima. The farm is called El Mirador from Don Victor, washed. But like I said, there was some weird stuff going on here, which was it's washed process, and then in parentheses, after anaerobic fermentation in the cherry, and then aerobic fermentation in mucilage. So that means when the coffee's in the cherry, it's just sitting there fermenting like a natural. And then after 32 hours, they take off the cherry and they don't wash it yet until they ferment it in its mucilage for another couple of hours, and then they wash it. So there's a 3-step process basically to the processing, not just wash all the cherry off and the mucilage, you know, and everything, and then let it dry in the sun. So that's where I think we're getting a lot of this sort of like getting hit from a lot of different places. It makes sense in the cup that this is scored just a bit higher than the natural, which is very good. You know, it's like intensity on one part of the tongue. You're like, damn, that's like a specialist. And then and then the Colombia in the mouth is more of like a specialized generalist. You know, it's like, oh, that's very good. Oh, that's very good. That's very good. That's pretty good. Pretty good. Pretty good. Pretty good. You know, so that's kind of how it feels like in my mouth. Now, I'm sorry to say, but the Costa Rica scored a clear 2 points under, which is a big deal in coffee world. It's classic. It's washed. It's good by all means, you know. But in comparison, these just knock it right out. And as such, this coffee of Costa Rica should be cheaper. Let's see. Scored 84.5, but valued more. It should have been cheaper to me in the cup because the flavors really aren't there for me. And somebody more with a better palate, a more refined palate, maybe can pick that stuff up. But it also could just be because this is a micro lot. Costa Rica, Terrazú, Comunidad Santa Cruz, micro lot. There's less of it. So, you know, supply and demand, it's just more money. So with me, those are the things you got to consider when you're purchasing coffee. It's like, well, this is quote unquote costs more, so maybe it's worth more. No, these are the things you have to kind of sit down and sort of be like, judge, like, okay, this is more per pound, $7.25 per pound for this coffee that I don't like on the table. So now is it worth it? Not really, not for me, right? So as a roaster, we look at those things. You know, you let the cup kind of guide you there. And then balance with the price, balance with maybe even the flavors, the potential of the coffee. Can you take it to, do you have a lot of range in the light? You won't really know until you take it to production, right? But you're kind of trying to be preemptive with what you're tasting in the cup. And with me, I feel like I have a lot of capability with this Colombia because in the mouth, it was like a specialized generalist, right? Just like, oh, it's so good in so many areas, right? And that's my sort of preemptive brain sort of working there, which is this one. Even though I think it's thebomb.com, like I feel like maybe I can only roast this one way to where I feel it's the best. Whereas the Colombia, I have more versatility because I sell coffee, right? So if I sell coffee, I want to sell to as many people as I can. So those are the kind of decisions that I'm trying to make at this time. And you don't always have to be this sort of crazy. It's not crazy. Logical. You don't always have to be this logical or sort of meticulous about the decisions when you're making coffee. Hey, if you have the budget to buy two, get the specialist and then get the generalized specialist. You know, why not? Because they're both very good. And maybe this one, you're just like, dude, it's not even worth my money at this time. You know, I think this price is just because it's a micro lot. There's just less of it. And that's why the price is higher. Even though on the table, in the cup, these guys performing better for me. So those are the things I sort of think about. Okay, as a roaster, if you're kind of decided on taste, cool. Maybe they all taste good. So here's another way to look at it. We go to where you bought the coffee, and if you have a green source that provides you with information like humidity, density, harvest date, arrival date, the way that Hasea does, you can take all these little data points and then just sort of one by one break them down, okay? So like humidity, 11.2. Okay, that's the Costa Rica one. What does that mean to me? Well, nothing yet. Okay, El Salvador, humidity, 11%. Okay, Colombia, humidity, 11.4%. Now, what does that mean to me as a roaster? Typically, I'll pair this information, this data point, with their altitude. I'll pair humidity with altitude, and then I'll sort of make a correlation between those two in that if I have a higher than 11% of humidity and a higher altitude, that probably tells me that this coffee can take a lot of heat or will require a lot of heat and energy or fuel. I'll just say energy. It'll require a lot of energy to unlock what is in that coffee, right? So I'm going to need a roaster that can reach a high temperature in an efficient way and not lose any momentum or energy in the roast. I have a Mill City Roaster 1 kg, rocking that 2019. I got 20,000 BTUs up in here. So that means that I can really take this coffee and roast it at a high level and really unlock the flavors that are within this coffee. If I had a hot top, I'd be pretty reluctant to choose a high elevation coffee with a little bit higher humidity level because I know the machine, the capability of the machine is not as strong. You know, it's not going to be able to reach the energy levels that I'll need consistently and efficiently in order for me to do what I need to do in production. Okay, so those tiny little things can make a big difference, you know. Maybe if your machine was maybe not so powerful, it didn't have that capability, maybe you would have been like, okay, so let me go to the El Salvador with the 11% humidity and the 1500 altitude. Sort of, you know, medium, not a very dense, not a very high elevation coffee, not a very, not a coffee with a lot of moisture. My roaster can handle it. So you just want to choose a coffee that your roaster can actually roast well and efficiently. Does that make sense? Okay, so those are the things kind of going in my mind. Again, I'm making the decision again to back up my first pick, which was the Colombia. Double check buy. Now it'll have a triple check. It's the easiest to roast for me. I know my roaster can handle this. I know my roaster can take it to light. It can take it to medium light. It can take it to light medium. It can take it to medium dark. And it can do it efficiently and effectively. Okay, so that's what I'm going to choose. Congrats to Colombia for winning this round. I let the cup and all those other factors sort of guide how I'm doing it or how I make a decision and come to buying the next green. And the next one after that, it may change, you know, depending I buy a decaf, depending I buy something directly for blends, directly for dark roasting stuff, right? So yeah, adjust accordingly. Okay, I hope that helps. We'll see you in the next one. Bye.